The clock on my nightstand glowed 2:47 a.m. when I heard Saddie's key in the lock. 3 hours late from her emergency board meeting. I lay there in our king-sized bed, staring at the ceiling of our perfectly decorated bedroom, listening to her stumble through our perfectly clean living room in what sounded like one shoe. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My name is Evan Carter, and I'm a forensic accountant. That means I find money that people try to hide. Numbers don't lie to me the way people do. Numbers are honest, predictable, logical. People? Well, people are messy, complicated, and apparently fond of late-night board meetings that leave them smelling like expensive cologne that isn't mine. Evan, you awake? Saddie whispered, slipping into our bathroom. The shower started immediately, at 3 in the morning, because that's totally normal behavior for someone who spent the evening discussing quarterly projections. I closed my eyes and pretended to sleep. Through my eyelids, I could see the bathroom light casting shadows that danced across our bedroom walls. The same walls where Saddie had hung our wedding photos just 2 years ago. The same walls that now felt like they were closing in on me. Saddie emerged 20 minutes later, hair damp, wearing a silk nightgown I'd never seen before. She slid into bed beside me, her skin still warm from the shower, smelling like our expensive body wash instead of whatever cologne had been clinging to her earlier. Long meeting? I mumbled, still pretending to be half asleep. You know how Richard gets when the numbers don't add up, she said, settling into her pillow. He kept us there until we figured out the quarterly discrepancies. Richard Huxley, her boss, the CEO of Meridian Tech Solutions, where Saddie worked as Vice President of Strategic Development. A title that sounded impressive but basically meant she organized corporate events and managed client relationships. Richard was one of those guys who wore $1,000 suits and talked about disrupting markets while never actually explaining what his company did that was so revolutionary. Must have been some serious discrepancies, I said, rolling over to face her in the darkness. Your phone was going straight to voicemail after 10. Battery died. You know how these old conference room outlets are. She turned away from me, pulling the covers up to her chin. I'm exhausted. Can we talk in the morning? I stared at her silhouette in the darkness. Saddie had always been a terrible liar. When we first started dating, I found it charming how she'd blush and stammer when trying to surprise me with birthday plans or anniversary dinners. Now, watching her lie about where she'd been for the past 6 hours, it just made my chest feel hollow. The next morning, Saddie was already gone when I woke up. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter. Early client breakfast, love you. With a little heart drawn after her name. The same heart she'd been drawing since college, back when we actually meant it when we said we loved each other. I made coffee and sat at our granite breakfast bar, looking out at our perfectly manicured backyard. We'd bought this house in Westfield Heights 18 months ago. 4 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, 2-car garage, and a mortgage that required both our salaries to maintain. The American dream, complete with a wife who was apparently living a double life. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister Haley. Coffee later? I have news about the job interview. Haley was 2 years younger than me and had recently left the police force to start her own private investigation business. She said she was tired of dealing with department politics and wanted to be her own boss. I suspected she just enjoyed having an excuse to follow cheating spouses around parking lots, but I kept that opinion to myself. I texted back, Sure, usual place at 2? Perfect. And bring that look you get when you're trying to solve a puzzle. I might have work for you. The usual place was Murphy's Diner on 5th Street, a greasy spoon that served coffee strong enough to wake the dead and minded their own business when customers wanted to have private conversations. Haley was already there when I arrived, sitting in our regular booth in the back corner, wearing jeans and a leather jacket that made her look more like a biker than a former cop. "You look like hell," she said, as I slid into the booth across from her. "Thanks. You always know just what to say to make a guy feel better." "I'm serious, Evan. When's the last time you slept? And don't tell me you're getting 8 hours, because those bags under your eyes say otherwise." I ordered coffee from the waitress and waited until she was out of earshot before answering. "Saddie's been working late a lot. It's hard to sleep when you're wondering if your wife is actually at the office or somewhere else." Haley leaned forward, her expression shifting from sisterly concern to professional interest. "What kind of somewhere else?" "The kind where she comes home at 3 a.m. smelling like cologne and claiming her phone battery died." "How long has this been going on?" 6 weeks, maybe 2 months. It started gradually. An occasional late meeting, a weekend conference, a client dinner that ran long. Now it's 3 nights a week, minimum." Haley pulled out her phone and opened a note-taking app. "Tell me about the boss." "Richard Huxley. Early 40s, divorced, drives a Ferrari, lives in a penthouse downtown. The kind of guy who calls everyone champ and thinks harassment laws are just suggestions." "Sounds charming. What does your gut tell you?" I stared into my coffee cup, watching the cream swirl in patterns that reminded me of storm clouds. "My gut tells me that my wife is sleeping with her boss, and I'm the last person in their office to figure it out." "Your gut is usually right about these things. Remember when you figured out that the Henderson construction was embezzling from the city contracts? You knew something was wrong 6 months before anyone else caught on." "Numbers are easier than people, Haley. When someone's cooking the books, there's always a trail. Bank transfers, invoices that don't match, expenses that seem too convenient. But when someone's cheating on their marriage, the evidence is a lot more personal." Haley reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "What do you want to do about it?" "I want proof. Real proof. Not just suspicions and circumstantial evidence. If I'm going to blow up my marriage, I want to be absolutely certain I'm right." "And if you get proof? What then?" I looked out the window at the street outside. Normal people walking to normal jobs, living normal lives where their spouses came home when they said they would, and didn't lie about dead phone batteries. Then I guess I figure out what comes next. The thing about being a forensic accountant is that you develop certain skills. You learn to notice patterns, to spot inconsistencies, to follow paper trails that other people can't see. You also learn that people are creatures of habit, even when they're trying to hide something. Saddie had habits. She always paid for gas with cash when she was doing something she didn't want me to know about. She always cleared her browser history after using our home computer, and she always forgot to turn off location services on her phone. I spent the next week documenting everything. The times she left, the times she came home, the excuses she made, the way she acted when she thought I wasn't paying attention. I felt like a stalker in my own marriage, but I needed to know the truth. On Thursday night, Saddie announced she had another late meeting. "It's the Morrison account," she said, applying lipstick in our bedroom mirror. "Richard wants the whole team to stay until we get the presentation perfect." "The Morrison account that was supposed to be finished last week?" "You know how these things go. The client keeps changing their requirements." She capped the lipstick and dropped it into her purse. "Don't wait up. This could go until midnight." I watched her drive away in her silver BMW, then waited 10 minutes before getting into my own car. Following someone without being detected is harder than it looks in movies, but I had an advantage. I knew where Saddie was supposed to be going. Meridian Tech's office building was downtown, a gleaming tower of glass and steel that Richard had moved the company into last year as part of his image upgrade. Saddie's BMW wasn't in the company parking garage. I drove around the block twice, checking every level, every corner. Her car wasn't there. I parked across the street and called the main office number. "Meridian Tech Solutions, this is Jennifer." "Hi, Jennifer. This is Evan Carter, Saddie Carter's husband. She forgot her reading glasses at home and I wanted to drop them off. Is she still in the meeting? I'm sorry, Mr. Carter, but everyone left around 5:30 today. The office is pretty much empty except for security. Oh. Maybe she went to grab dinner before the meeting starts. What time was it supposed to begin? I don't have any late meetings on the schedule for tonight. Are you sure she said it was here? My stomach dropped. Maybe I misunderstood. Thanks anyway. I hung up and sat in my car, staring at the empty office building. The Morrison account meeting that was supposed to keep Saddie busy until midnight didn't exist, which meant she was somewhere else, doing something else, with someone else. I drove home and called Omar, my best friend since college and the best cybersecurity consultant I knew. Evan, my man, what's going on? I need a favor, a big one. This about Saddie? Omar had met Saddie dozens of times at barbecues and birthday parties. He was always polite to her, but I could tell he didn't particularly like her. Saddie thought Omar was immature because he collected vintage video games and wore t-shirts with obscure programming jokes on them. Yeah, it's about Saddie. I think she's cheating on me. Shit, man. I'm sorry. What do you need? I need to know where she's been going when she says she's working late. Can you help me track her phone? Legally? That's a gray area, since it's her phone and you're married, technically. Yeah, I can do that. But are you sure you want to know? I'm sure. Okay, I'll need her phone for about 5 minutes to install the tracking software. Can you get me access without her knowing? She always leaves it charging in the kitchen when she showers. I can get you 5 minutes. Meet me at my place tomorrow night. Bring the phone. Omar lived in a converted warehouse in the Arts District, surrounded by computer monitors and enough electronic equipment to run a small television station. His apartment always smelled like energy drinks and Chinese takeout, and he seemed to survive entirely on a diet of caffeine and delivery pizza. This is pretty standard tracking software, he explained as he connected Saddie's phone to his computer. It'll log her location every 15 minutes and store the data in a cloud account that only you can access. She'll never know it's there unless she specifically goes looking for it. And if she finds it? Then you tell her you were worried about her safety and wanted to be able to find her if something happened. Lots of married couples track each other's phones these days. It's not that weird. I watched him work, his fingers flying across the keyboard as lines of code scrolled down his monitor. How long have you known? Known what? That she was cheating. Omar stopped typing and looked at me. I didn't know for sure, but I suspected. Why didn't you say anything? Because suspecting and knowing are two different things, and because you're my friend, and I didn't want to be the guy who destroyed your marriage based on a feeling. What gave you the feeling? The way she acted at your birthday party last month. She spent the whole night on her phone texting someone. And when you tried to look over her shoulder, she got defensive and said it was work stuff. But it was a Saturday night, man. What kind of work emergency happens on a Saturday night? I remembered that party. We'd had it at our house, invited about 20 people, ordered way too much food. Saddie had seemed distracted the whole time, constantly checking her phone, disappearing into the kitchen to take calls. I'd chalked it up to stress from work, but now I wondered if she'd been coordinating with Richard about when they could sneak away together. There, Omar said, disconnecting the phone. All set. You can check her location from any computer or smartphone. Just log into this website with the username and password I'm giving you. He handed me a piece of paper with the login information. Evan, I have to ask, what are you planning to do with this information? I don't know yet. First, I want to confirm what I already suspect. Then I'll figure out what comes next. Just be careful, okay? I know you're hurt, and you have every right to be, but don't do anything that's going to land you in jail or cost you everything you've worked for. I pocketed the paper and picked up Saddie's phone. I'm not planning to hurt anyone, Omar. I just want the truth. The truth has a way of hurting people all by itself. The tracking software worked exactly as Omar had promised. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched Saddie's location data paint a picture of deception that was both more elaborate and more pathetic than I'd imagined. On nights when she claimed to be working late, she was actually at Richard's penthouse on the 32nd floor of the Meridian Tower. On weekends, when she said she was having lunch with her college friends, she was at the Westfield Country Club with Richard. On the Tuesday, when she said she had food poisoning and couldn't go to dinner with my parents, she was at a hotel downtown for 3 hours in the middle of the afternoon. The country club visits were what really got to me. The Westfield Country Club was where Saddie and I had talked about having our wedding reception before we decided we couldn't afford it. She'd always wanted to be a member there, to be part of that exclusive social circle where the city's wealthy elite played golf and made business deals over expensive lunches. Apparently, Richard had given her access to that world, and she'd decided it was worth throwing away our marriage to keep it. On a Saturday afternoon when Saddie claimed to be at a work retreat, I drove to the country club. I'd never been inside before, but I'd driven past it hundreds of times. It was the kind of place that screamed old money and new pretensions, with perfectly manicured grounds and a circular driveway where valets parked luxury cars. I sat in my Honda Accord in the parking lot, feeling completely out of place among the BMWs and Mercedes. Through the large windows of the main dining room, I could see Saddie and Richard at a corner table. She was wearing a dress I'd never seen before, something expensive-looking in navy blue that hugged her curves in all the right places. Richard was leaning across the table, his hand covering hers, both of them laughing at something he'd just said. They looked happy, comfortable, like a real couple. I took photos with my phone, zooming in as much as possible without the image becoming too blurry. Evidence, documentation, proof that my marriage was over, even if I was the only one who knew it yet. As I was preparing to leave, my phone rang. It was Haley. "Where are you?" she asked. "Sitting in a country club parking lot watching my wife have lunch with her boss." "The Westfield Country Club? I'm 5 minutes away. Stay put." "Haley, I don't think—" "Stay put, Evan. I'm coming." She arrived in her black pickup truck, wearing jeans and a blazer that made her look like she belonged at the country club despite her vehicle. Haley had always been good at adapting to her surroundings, a skill that had served her well as a cop, and now as a private investigator. "Show me," she said, sliding into my passenger seat. I pointed toward the dining room window. Saddie and Richard were still at their table, but now Richard's hand was resting on Saddie's thigh under the table. Even from a distance, their body language was unmistakably intimate. "How long have they been here?" "About an hour. They ordered wine with lunch. Expensive wine, from the look of the bottle." Haley pulled out a small pair of binoculars from her jacket pocket. "Richard Huxley, right? The guy with the Ferrari and the ego problem?" "That's him." She studied them through the binoculars for several minutes. "They're comfortable with each other. This isn't a new thing, Evan. The way they're sitting, the way they're touching, the way she's looking at him. They've been doing this for months." I figured as much. "What's your next move?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to walk in there and confront them. The other part of me wants to pretend I never saw this and go home." "And the third part?" "What third part?" Haley lowered the binoculars and looked at me. "The part that wants revenge. The part that's tired of being made a fool of. The part that wants to make them pay for what they're doing to you." She was right, of course. There was a part of me that wanted to destroy them both, to humiliate them the way they were humiliating me. But I was also scared of that part of myself, scared of what I might do if I let it take control. "I'm not a vindictive person, Haley." "No, you're not. You're a good guy who's been betrayed by the person who was supposed to love you most. But being a good guy doesn't mean you have to be a doormat." As we watched, Richard signaled for the check. He paid with a platinum credit card, the kind that required a 6-figure income to qualify for. Saddie excused herself to go to the restroom, walking with the confident stride of a woman who felt like she belonged in a place like this. "I have an idea," Haley said. But you're not going to like it. What kind of idea? The kind that gets us inside that club so we can hear what they're actually saying to each other. The kind that gives us real evidence instead of just photos from a parking lot. How? I know someone who works here. Tommy Morrison used to be on the force with me before he got into private security. He's the weekend security supervisor. He owes me a favor. I don't want to get anyone in trouble. Tommy won't get in trouble. He'll just happen to be doing a routine security check in the dining room, and his body camera will happen to record whatever conversation is taking place at table 12. I watched Saddie emerge from the restroom and return to the table. Richard stood up when she approached, pulling out her chair like a gentleman. The gesture was so natural, so automatic, that it was clear he'd done it many times before. "Okay," I said. "Make the call." 20 minutes later, a security guard in a navy blazer walked through the dining room, nodding politely to guests as he conducted his routine patrol. He spent about 30 seconds near Saddie and Richard's table, adjusting something on his radio while they continued their conversation. My phone buzzed with a text from Haley. "Got it. Tommy says they were talking about a weekend trip to Napa Valley. She's telling him she'll figure out an excuse to give you." I stared at the text message, feeling something cold and hard settle in my chest. A weekend trip. Saddie was planning a romantic getaway with her boss while I sat at home wondering why my wife didn't seem to love me anymore. "That's it," I said. "I'm done being the understanding husband." "What do you want to do?" I started my car and put it in reverse. "I want to talk to a divorce lawyer, and then I want to figure out how to make them both pay for what they've done." As we drove away from the country club, I caught one last glimpse of Saddie and Richard in my rearview mirror. They were walking toward the valet stand, his arm around her waist, both of them laughing at some private joke. Soon, I thought, the joke would be on them. Monday morning, Saddie was unusually cheerful. She hummed while getting dressed, spent extra time on her makeup, and even made me coffee before leaving for work. The kind of behavior that might have seemed sweet if I didn't know she was planning a weekend getaway with her boss. "You seem happy," I said, accepting the coffee mug she offered me. "Just excited about work. We're closing the Morrison deal this week, and Richard thinks there might be a promotion in it for me." The Morrison deal. The same fictional account that had supposedly kept her out until midnight 2 weeks ago. Saddie wasn't just cheating on me. She was getting lazy about her lies. "That's great, honey. You deserve it." She kissed me on the cheek, her lips lingering just long enough to feel like a betrayal. "I might be late again tonight. Richard wants to celebrate with the team if we get the contract signed." "Of course he does." After she left, I called in sick to work and drove to downtown to meet with Patricia Hawkins, the divorce attorney Haley had recommended. Patricia's office was in one of those converted historic buildings where lawyers and accountants clustered together like vultures, feeding off other people's misery and mistakes. "Mr. Carter," Patricia said, shaking my hand with the firm grip of someone who'd spent years dealing with angry, desperate people. "Haley tells me you need to discuss your options regarding your marriage." Patricia was in her 50s, with gray hair pulled back in a professional bun and the kind of no-nonsense expression that suggested she'd seen every variation of human stupidity at least twice. Her office walls were covered with law degrees and certificates that proclaimed her expertise in family law and asset protection. "My wife is having an affair," I said, settling into the chair across from her desk. "I have photos, location data, and recorded conversations. I want to know what my options are." "How long have you been married?" 2 years. We bought a house together 18 months ago. Joint mortgage, both our names on the deed." "Any children?" "No." "Prenuptial agreement?" "No. We were young and stupid and in love. Or at least I thought we were." Patricia made notes on a legal pad. "Georgia is a no-fault divorce state, which means adultery won't affect the division of assets unless you can prove she spent marital funds on the affair. Do you have evidence of that?" I thought about the expensive dress Saddie had been wearing at the country club, The wine they'd ordered, the weekend trip they were planning. Possibly. She's been spending more money lately, buying clothes and jewelry I've never seen her wear around me. That's a start. What about her income versus yours? We make about the same amount. She's a VP at a tech company. I'm a forensic accountant. Our combined income is around $200,000 a year. And the house? Worth about $400,000. We owe $320 on the mortgage. Patricia leaned back in her chair. In a standard no-fault divorce, you'd split everything 50-50. The house, the debt, any retirement accounts or savings. But if we can prove she used marital assets to fund her affair, we might be able to adjust that in your favor. What kind of proof would I need? Credit card statements showing charges for hotels, restaurants, gifts, bank records showing cash withdrawals that can't be accounted for, phone records showing excessive communication with her lover. The more documentation you have, the better your position. I pulled out my phone and showed her some of the photos I'd taken at the country club. I have tracking data showing she's been lying about where she goes when she claims to be working late. I have audio of her planning a weekend trip with him, and I have access to all our joint financial accounts. Patricia studied the photos with the clinical detachment of someone who'd seen hundreds of similar images. This is good evidence of the affair, but it's not enough to prove financial misconduct. You'll need to dig deeper into your financial records. I'm a forensic accountant. Digging into financial records is what I do for a living. Then you know what to look for. Unusual expenditures, cash advances, charges that don't match her claimed activities. Build a timeline that correlates her spending with her affair. I left Patricia's office with a retainer agreement and a clear mission. I had 2 weeks to document every financial aspect of Saddie's infidelity before confronting her with divorce papers. 2 weeks to build an airtight case that would ensure I didn't lose everything I'd worked for to subsidize my wife's betrayal. That evening, while Saddie was at her celebration dinner, I spread our financial records across the dining room table like a general planning a military campaign. Credit card statements, bank records, investment account summaries, mortgage documents. The paper trail of our marriage, reduced to numbers and dates and transaction codes. The pattern was obvious once I knew what to look for. Starting about 4 months ago, Saddie had begun using our joint credit card for charges that didn't make sense. Expensive lingerie from boutiques I'd never heard of. Dinners at restaurants she'd never mentioned. Hotel charges on days when she claimed to be working late at the office. The most damning evidence was a charge for $2,000 at Tiffany & Co., made on the same day she'd told me she was attending a boring compliance seminar. I'd never seen any expensive jewelry from Tiffany's, which meant she'd either hidden it or given it to someone else. My phone rang. It was Omar. "How's the investigation going?" "Better than I hoped. Worse than I feared. She's been using our joint credit card to fund the affair. Hotels, restaurants, jewelry, clothes. Thousands of dollars over the past 4 months. That's gotta hurt, man." "The money hurts. The betrayal hurts worse. But you know what really pisses me off?" "What?" "She's not even trying to hide it anymore. She's gotten so comfortable with her lies that she's not bothering to cover her tracks. She thinks I'm too stupid or too trusting to figure it out." "Maybe she thinks you don't care enough to look." "Well, she's about to find out how wrong she is." Friday afternoon, Saddie announced she was going on a weekend retreat with her marketing team. "It's a team-building thing," she said, packing an overnight bag with clothes I'd never seen her wear around me. "We're going to some resort in the mountains. Richard thinks it'll help us bond as a department." I'm sure he does, I thought. "Which resort?" "Someplace called Pine Valley Lodge. You know how these corporate retreats are. Boring seminars during the day, forced socializing at night." I looked up Pine Valley Lodge on my phone. It was a luxury resort in the North Georgia mountains, the kind of place that advertised romantic getaways and couples spa packages. Their weekend rates started at $500 a night. Sounds expensive for a corporate retreat. The company's paying for it. Richard says we need to invest in our team if we want to stay competitive. She kissed me goodbye, the same perfunctory peck on the cheek she'd been giving me for months. "I'll call you tonight after the welcome dinner. Have fun bonding with your team." After she left, I called Haley. "They're going to Pine Valley Lodge for the weekend. I want to follow them." "Evan, that's stalking, and it's dangerous. What if they see you?" "I don't care if they see me. I'm tired of hiding in parking lots and pretending I don't know what's going on. I want to confront them." "That's a bad idea. You'll look like the crazy, jealous husband. It'll hurt your position in the divorce." "My position in the divorce is already solid. I have financial records proving she used marital assets to fund her affair. I have location data proving she's been lying about where she goes. I have photos and audio recordings. What I don't have is satisfaction." Haley sighed. "What kind of satisfaction are you looking for?" "I want to look Richard Huxley in the eye and let him know that I know what he's been doing. I want to see Saddie's face when she realizes her perfect little secret is blown. And I want them both to understand that there are consequences for treating people like garbage." "And then what? You punch him? You make a scene? You get arrested for disturbing the peace?" "No." Then I walk away and let them deal with the fallout. Saturday morning, I drove to Pine Valley Lodge. It was a 2-hour drive through winding mountain roads, past small towns and scenic overlooks that Saddie and I had once talked about visiting together. The irony wasn't lost on me that she was finally experiencing the romantic mountain getaway we'd planned, just not with me. The lodge was everything the website had promised. Rustic elegance surrounded by towering pine trees, with a circular driveway where luxury cars were parked like trophies. I spotted Saddie's BMW immediately, parked next to Richard's red Ferrari. I checked into a room using cash and a credit card in my own name. If Saddie bothered to look at our joint account statements, she'd see the charge and know I'd been there. But I was past caring about maintaining the pretense of ignorance. My room was on the 3rd floor, with a view of the lodge's main dining room and outdoor patio. I set up my camera with a telephoto lens and waited. At 7 o'clock, they appeared for dinner. Saddie wore a black cocktail dress that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. Richard had his hand on the small of her back as they walked to their table, the gesture possessive and intimate. I watched them through my camera lens, documenting their evening like a private investigator building a case. They shared appetizers, fed each other dessert, held hands across the table while the sun set behind the mountains. They looked like honeymooners, not co-workers on a team-building retreat. At 9:30, they left the dining room and headed toward the elevator. I gave them 10 minutes, then went downstairs to the front desk. "Excuse me," I said to the desk clerk, a young woman with a name tag that read, Jessica. "I'm trying to reach my wife. She's here with a corporate group, but I can't remember her room number." "Saddie Carter?" Jessica typed on her computer. "I'm sorry, sir, but I don't show a Saddie Carter registered with us." "Maybe she registered under her maiden name? Saddie Williams?" More typing. "No, I don't see that either. What about Richard Huxley? They're here together for a business retreat." "Oh, yes, Mr. Huxley is in the presidential suite, but I only show one guest registered for that room." One guest, one room, the presidential suite. "Thank you," I said, walking away before Jessica could ask any more questions. The presidential suite was on the top floor, accessible only by a special elevator that required a key card. But the lodge also had a service elevator that stopped on every floor, including the penthouse level. I took the service elevator to the top floor and found the presidential suite at the end of a long hallway. The door was solid wood with brass fixtures, the kind of entrance that screamed luxury and privacy. I stood outside that door for 5 minutes, listening to the sound of my own heartbeat and trying to decide what to do next. I could knock and confront them directly. I could slip a note under the door letting them know I knew about their affair. I could take photos of the door with the room number visible and use them as evidence in the divorce proceedings. Instead, I did something that surprised even me. I walked away. Not because I was scared and not because I'd lost my nerve. I walked away because I realized that confronting them at the lodge would give them the opportunity to control the narrative. They could claim it was a business trip that had turned romantic. They could say it was the first time anything had happened between them. They could make me look like the paranoid, jealous husband who'd followed his wife on a business trip. But if I waited, if I let them think they'd gotten away with it, I could choose the time and place for the confrontation. I could control the situation instead of reacting to it. I drove home that night with a plan forming in my mind, a plan that would give me the satisfaction I was looking for while ensuring that Saddie and Richard faced real consequences for their betrayal. The plan would require patience, careful timing, and the kind of attention to detail that had made me good at my job. Lucky for me, I was very good at my job. Saddie came home Sunday evening glowing with what she claimed was the satisfaction of a successful team-building retreat. It was amazing, Evan. We did trust exercises and communication workshops. I feel like our department is really going to gel now. That's wonderful, honey. You and Richard must be very proud of how it went. Something flickered in her eyes at the mention of Richard's name, but she recovered quickly. He's a great leader. He really knows how to bring out the best in people. I'm sure he does, I thought. Monday morning, I called in sick to work again and drove to Meridian Tech's office building. I'd never been inside before, but I had a legitimate reason for visiting now. Saddie had forgotten her laptop charger at home, and I was just being a thoughtful husband by bringing it to her. The lobby was all glass and chrome, with a reception desk that looked like it belonged on a spaceship. The receptionist, a young blonde woman with perfect teeth, smiled at me like I was a potential client instead of the betrayed husband of one of her colleagues. "I'm here to see Saddie Carter," I said. "I'm her husband, and she forgot her charger at home." "Of course. Saddie's on the 15th floor. Just take the elevator up, and her assistant Maya can help you find her office." Maya turned out to be a woman in her early 30s with short dark hair and the kind of nervous energy that suggested she drank too much coffee and not enough water. She greeted me with the enthusiasm of someone who was genuinely happy to meet Saddie's husband. "Evan, I've heard so much about you. Saddie talks about you all the time. All good things, I hope." "Oh yes, she adores you. She's always saying how lucky she is to have such an understanding husband." Understanding. That was one way to put it. "Is she in her office? I brought her laptop charger." "She's in a meeting with Mr. Huxley, but it should be wrapping up soon. Would you like to wait in her office?" Saddie's office was a corner space with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a view of the city skyline. Her desk was organized with the same obsessive attention to detail she applied to everything else in her life. Family photos, motivational quotes, a small plant that somehow survived despite the artificial lighting. What caught my attention was her computer screen, which she'd left unlocked when she went to her meeting. Her email inbox was open, and the most recent message was from Richard, sent just an hour ago. The subject line read, "Last weekend." I glanced toward the door, then clicked on the email. "Saddie, I can't stop thinking about our time at the lodge. You were incredible. I know we have to be careful at the office, but I'm already planning our next getaway. Maybe somewhere tropical this time? We could tell Evan you're going to a conference in Miami. Let me know what you think. R." I stared at the screen, feeling a mixture of rage and vindication. Here was the proof I needed, in Richard's own words, that they'd been planning to continue their affair and that they viewed me as nothing more than an obstacle to be deceived. I took photos of the email with my phone, then scrolled through Saddie's inbox looking for other messages from Richard. There were dozens of them, dating back months, each one more intimate and incriminating than the last. Planning to surprise her? I turned around to find Maya standing in the doorway, holding a cup of coffee, and smiling at me with the kind of expression people use when they think they're witnessing something romantic. "Something like that," I said, closing the email program. "She's so lucky to have you. Most husbands wouldn't drive all the way downtown just to bring a charger." Most husbands don't have wives who work as hard as Saddie does. Maya's expression shifted slightly, and I realized she knew something. Maybe not the full extent of Saddie's affair, but enough to make her uncomfortable with the conversation. "The meeting should be ending soon," she said. "Would you like me to let her know you're here?" "Actually, I think I'll surprise her. Which conference room are they using?" "The big one at the end of the hall, but I'm not sure." I was already walking toward the conference room before Maya could finish her sentence. The door was closed, but there was a window that looked into the room. Through the glass, I could see Saddie and Richard sitting across from each other at a long table covered with documents and laptops. They weren't looking at the documents. Richard had his hand on Saddie's thigh, and she was leaning toward him with the kind of body language that suggested they were discussing something much more intimate than quarterly projections. As I watched, he leaned over and kissed her, a long, passionate kiss that left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. I knocked on the door. They sprang apart like teenagers caught making out in their parents' basement. Saddie's face went white when she saw me through the window, and Richard looked like he was trying to decide whether to run or fight. I opened the door and walked into the conference room with the casual confidence of someone who belonged there. "Hi, honey," I said to Saddie. "You forgot your charger." "Evan." Saddie's voice was barely above a whisper. "What are you doing here?" "I just told you. You forgot your charger." I set it on the conference table, right between them. I was in the neighborhood, so I thought I'd drop it off. Richard had recovered his composure and was trying to project the kind of alpha male confidence that probably worked on most people. "Evan, right? I'm Richard Huxley, Saddie's boss. We were just wrapping up a strategy session." "Is that what you call it?" I looked around the conference room, noting the complete absence of any actual work materials. "Interesting strategy. I think there might be some confusion here," Richard said, standing up and straightening his tie. "Saddie and I were discussing the Morrison account." "The Morrison account that doesn't exist?" Saddie made a small, choking sound. Richard's confident expression faltered. "I'm a forensic accountant, Richard. I investigate financial fraud for a living. Did you really think I wouldn't notice that my wife has been lying about where she goes and what she does? Did you think I wouldn't check to see if the Morrison account was real?" "Evan, please," Saddie said, finally finding her voice. "Let me explain." "Explain what?" "How you've been using our joint credit card to buy lingerie for your boss? How you've been lying to me for months about working late when you were actually in his penthouse? How you spent last weekend at a luxury resort planning your next affair while I sat at home wondering why my wife didn't love me anymore." Richard stepped forward, trying to insert himself between me and Saddie. "Now look here, Carter. I don't know what you think you saw, but I saw you kiss my wife 30 seconds ago. I have photos of you together at the Westfield Country Club. I have location data showing Saddie at your penthouse when she claimed to be working late. I have email records of you planning romantic getaways together. What I don't have is any patience left for your bullshit." The conference room fell silent, except for the sound of Saddie crying and the hum of the air conditioning. Richard looked like he was trying to calculate his options, probably wondering if he could somehow spin this situation to his advantage. "Here's what's going to happen," I continued, my voice calm and steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my system. "Saddie, you're going to pack up your office and resign, effective immediately. Richard, you're going to accept her resignation and provide her with a neutral reference that doesn't mention the reason for her departure. And both of you are going to stay the hell away from me while I decide how much of this story I want to share with your colleagues, your friends, and your families." "You can't make me resign," Saddie said, her tears replaced by the kind of defiance that suggested she still didn't understand the gravity of her situation. "Actually, I can't. But I can make your life here very uncomfortable. I can send copies of Richard's emails to the company's board of directors. I can file a harassment complaint with HR. I can make sure everyone in this office knows exactly what kind of strategy sessions you've been having with your boss." Richard's face had gone pale. That would be blackmail. No, that would be consequences. Blackmail would be if I demanded money or favors in exchange for keeping quiet. I'm not asking for anything except for you to leave me alone while I clean up the mess you've made of my life. I picked up Saddie's laptop charger from the conference table and handed it to her. You won't be needing this anymore, since you won't be working here, but I thought you should have it anyway, since I drove all the way downtown to bring it to you. I walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back to face them. Oh, and Saddie, don't bother coming home tonight, or any other night. Your things will be packed and waiting for you on the front porch. The locks have already been changed. It was a lie. I hadn't changed the locks yet, and I hadn't packed her things, but I would as soon as I got home. As I left the conference room, I could hear Saddie calling my name, her voice desperate and pleading. But I didn't turn around. I'd spent months being the understanding husband, the trusting partner, the man who gave his wife the benefit of the doubt, even when all the evidence pointed to betrayal. I was done being that man. The elevator doors closed behind me, and I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: relief. The waiting was over, the pretending was finished, and the truth was finally out in the open. Now came the part I'd been looking forward to, watching them deal with the consequences of their choices. Epilogue. 3 months later. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday morning in October. Patricia had done exactly what she'd promised, using the financial evidence I'd gathered to secure a settlement that left me with the house, most of our savings, and my dignity intact. Saddie had tried to fight it at first, claiming the affair was a recent development and that she'd never used marital assets to fund it. But the paper trail was too comprehensive, the evidence too overwhelming. She eventually agreed to the settlement rather than face the humiliation of having all the details aired in open court. Richard had fired her the day after our confrontation, claiming her resignation had been voluntary, but making it clear she wouldn't be getting any references or recommendations. She'd found another job eventually, but at a much smaller company for significantly less money. The last I heard, they weren't seeing each other anymore. Apparently, Richard's interest in Saddie had diminished considerably once their affair was no longer secret and exciting. Funny how that works. I was sitting in my home office, the same room where I'd first started investigating Saddie's lies, when Haley called with an update on her private investigation business. I got 3 new clients this week, she said, all cheating spouse cases. Word is getting around that I know what I'm doing. Congratulations. You always were good at catching people in lies. I learned from the best. Speaking of which, how are you doing? Really doing, not just the polite answer you give everyone else. I looked around the office, which I'd redecorated since Saddie left. Gone were the carefully coordinated colors and expensive furniture she'd insisted on. In their place were comfortable chairs, practical lighting, and family photos that actually meant something to me. I'm good, Haley. Better than good, actually. I feel like I can breathe again. Any regrets about how you handled it? I thought about that question, which I'd been asking myself for months. Did I regret following Saddie to the country club? Did I regret confronting her and Richard at their office? Did I regret the cold, calculating way I dismantled their affair and their relationship? No, I said finally. I don't regret any of it. They made their choices and I made mine. The only thing I regret is not trusting my instincts sooner. What's next for you? I'm thinking about taking a vacation, maybe somewhere tropical. I've never been to Miami. Haley laughed. That's cold, even for you. I prefer to think of it as poetic justice. After we hung up, I went back to work on the case I'd been reviewing, a complex embezzlement scheme that involved shell companies and offshore accounts. The kind of puzzle that had always appealed to me, where patient investigation and attention to detail eventually revealed the truth. Numbers don't lie, I thought, studying the financial records spread across my desk. People lie, but numbers don't. It was a lesson I'd learned the hard way, but one I'd never forget. Outside my window, the autumn leaves were falling from the oak tree Saddie and I had planted when we first moved into the house. She'd wanted it to symbolize our growing relationship, our deepening roots, our commitment to building a life together. Now it was just a tree, and I was just a man who'd learned that sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away from people who don't deserve your trust. I turned back to my work, ready to solve the next puzzle, uncover the next lie, find the next truth hidden in a maze of numbers and deception. After all, it's what I do for a living.